Hey, welcome to X-Oriente, the new voice of brotherhood. I am your host, Eric Diamond.
I am your other host, Jason Van Dyke.
And this is the show that's cursed. This is now this is now the
Listen,
fourth.
listen. I know. I keep wanting to say, and we're back. But yeah,
This is the
fourth try.
fourth time is a charm.
It's got to be the charm.
It's got to be. So yeah, we're just it's some technical.
It's driven me to drink.
What's in the mug tonight?
Amstel Light.
Very nice.
Yeah, I just, sometimes you don't want to drink heavy beer.
That's right.
And I'm Dutch, so there's some favoritism being played.
There you go. All right, so tonight we're going to talk about the Manbox.
Well, yes, we are.
So
why do I feel this overwhelming sense of deja vu?
I know.
Speaking of deja vu, all of you out there who are executive producers and have access to our Ex Libris will be able to correctly define deja vu soon. But we'll get into that at the end of the show.
Okay.
See, that's it's called a teaser, Eric. That gets people, that hooks them and keeps them in.
Is that a technical term?
It's podcasting biz.
Yeah. I like it.
Right. Little industry terms.
I like it. All right. So the Manbox. So the origin of this this show, the origin of this was we had done a show a while back. I'd say 4 or 5 episodes back where we talked about an ad that Gillette had run. It
was right after the Super Bowl.
It was right after the Super Bowl, right? So it was about they had run this ad during the Super Bowl about toxic masculinity, and what refresh my memory. What was that?
The Gillette ad?
Yeah.
I remember it. I don't really remember it very well.
Okay.
Which, let me just tell you, for an ad that they probably spent $5 to $8 million filming and then airing, probably doesn't bode so well for Gillette. Although I remember that it was a Gillette ad, and that's a win for them. I remember that there were lots of vignettes in it. Right? Am I doing that right?
I think so. There were a lot of guys looking in the mirror and saying we have to do better and stuff.
Right.
But I think it was prompted.
It irritated a lot of people.
It did. I think like I applauded what they did. I think, having had some distance from it and kind of working through some of this stuff in my professional life, I think what it was is that they just didn't feel that Gillette was being authentic. Like right. they were sort of talking the talk, but they weren't necessarily walking the walk.
Right. It almost felt like astroturfing in a way.
Which is what for the uninitiated.
So the term grassroots, meaning like it's from the people, it comes from the grass, the roots of the grass up. Grassroots, the fake grassroots is astroturfing. And so astroturfing in the communications business can be multiple fake Twitter accounts. It can be glowing reviews on Yelp from marketing people and not actual customers. That's astroturfing. It is another word that I've heard used for it is saccharin, right? It's fake sugar.
Yeah.
So, but that is kind of how it came across. It also, I think, came across a little sanctimonious, right? It was a little, look at us. We know so well what ails the society, and we can fix it with this 1 minute Super Bowl ad.
Right. So, it kind of, here's the thing. I thought that the ad itself was a good gesture. I mean, we talked about it at the time. I thought it was a good it was a good gesture. It was, it was the right conversation to be having.
Mm-hmm.
And
Certainly.
what I didn't realize though is that they were just one of several,
Right.
men's,
Shaving and shaving accessories.
yeah, shaving and shaving accessories company that was kind of looking into stuff like this. So, and I think probably because it was one of those things that played really well. But what was interesting is that Harry's. So Harry's is another brand that if you listen to podcasts, you probably heard their ads. But they do they're sort of like a mail order, inexpensive razor blade kind of thing. They'll send you it's like a subscription service to razors.
Right.
And they actually created a report. They actually sponsored some research and created a report that was kind of interesting about called the Masculinity Report. And what they did was they looked at the sort of the factors that caused men, that they were trying to find what are the variables that would promote mental positivity among men. And this particular study was done with men in the UK. They looked at all different age groups, and they found some interesting stuff, right? And so, one of the things was that the things that were the values that were considered important by men were not what society normally tells us that they are. So you would think that men are super concerned with things like, fitness, working together, like athleticism, creativity.
Well, I want to walk you back just 2 seconds.
Okay, sure.
Before we get in that. And I think that part of why what you're going to talk about, why this is surprising, is considering who they're talking to. And so I think it bears pulling out who they interviewed. Who are they getting this information from? And so they broke it down into 5 categories: 18 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 49, 50 to 59, and then 60 to 85. Right. And they've got a pretty representative sample about it. The way that this breaks out, as far as how many guys or what the percentage in each group was that they surveyed, it breaks out pretty well. 18 to 29, 23%, 30 to 39, 23%, 40 to 49, 25%, 50 to 59, 19%, 60 to 85, 10%, right? And so that's a pretty good curve, and it's a pretty good representative sample, right, of the guys that are out there in the marketplace.
Yeah. So basically, we're looking across generations.
Right.
We're looking at everything from older Gen Z all the way up to boomers and then some.
It's exactly right, and even probably tail end greatest generation, to be honest. This was a survey and a report done in the UK. Okay, so almost all of this is UK based surveying. 20% of the guys came from London, and then everything else is the surrounding area, right? And so there's a good mix of rural and urban. So they're not just concentrating on one on one set of guys, whether you're urban or rural. What was really interesting is that the relationship status of these guys that they interviewed. And so 29.5% single, 7.6 divorced, widowed, separated, 17% cohabitating or in a relationship, and 45.4 married or civil partnership. So if you count cohabitating or in a relationship and married in a civil partnership, it is a 60%.
It's over half. Yeah.
It's well over half. Right. So that's kind of interesting. But now knowing that, right? Knowing who they're talking to
Mm-hmm.
as sort of a representative of males, right?
Right.
Now you get into what you're talking about, right?
Okay.
Well, I would think a male is, I like guy stuff. I like fitness. I like, hunting, fishing. I want, you know, I see a man defined as a man by his physical prowess.
Yeah.
But
Or his professional, or
yeah, right,
like his abilities, like
yeah,
his ability to be creative or
right.
adventurous.
A man is a hunter gatherer.
He's brave, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, but it turns out,
Yeah.
so
It turns out that's not the most important. In fact, those aspects were considered least important. Fitness.
number one blows my mind. Blows my mind. I'm gonna let you do it, but it blows my mind.
Number one was honesty.
Who'd have thought, right?
Honesty
Who'd have
was
thought?
the number one value that was considered most important. Number two,
Unbelievable.
reliability. Right. Number three, dependability.
Right.
Number four, loyalty, and number five, commitment. Right. It's all relationship stuff. And what's interesting is I'm not so sure like what the difference between reliability and dependability is. But
yeah,
but still, I think it's really interesting that those five things ranked at the top in terms of most important values that define maleness.
And the very last, the bottom one was athleticism.
Yeah, bottom one was athleticism. Yeah.
Fitness was the top.
31
of the
was
bottom.
fitness. Yeah, so they asked 35 different values they looked at.
Sure, right.
They were fitness, collaboration, creativity, adventurous, and athleticism.
It makes me a little sad that creativity came in 33rd, but that's all right.
No.
I mean, honesty came in number one, so I'm cool with that. But but if I had a disappointment, that would be it. Creativity 33.
And so then this was also kind of interesting, was that the importance of mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So when they ran, they said mental health, whether it was, they graded it on a 6 answer scale, ranging from very unimportant to very important, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really good one because there's no middle, right?
Right.
You have
right.
an even number of responses.
You're forced to have an opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
100%. I love that.
So it ranked as very important across all age groups.
Mm-hmm.
Across all age groups. And so that I thought that was kind of a very interesting thing. And then the importance of physical health was also ranked important, right? It was the most preferred answer was important, but not very important, which says that men rank mental health more important than physical health.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I thought was very interesting.
Blows my mind.
Yeah.
Blows my mind.
And so the things as predictors of mental positivity,
right,
job satisfaction, and relationship status were the top two.
Do you think that the relationship status answer there has something to do with the fact that 60% of the guys that were surveyed were in a relationship of some sort, a serious relationship, right? As defined by the study. I think that skews it a little bit.
Maybe I don't think so, because I think that men who are alone, and there's more and more of them.
Okay.
I think men who are alone aren't real happy.
Well, that's
You know,
fair. Okay.
you know
No,
what I
that's
mean?
fair.
Like, so I think,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think it
yeah.
is,
Okay.
I think it is an important
That's,
thing.
that's
So the
fair.
top
Okay.
three predictors of mental positivity, and the range was job satisfaction, relationship status, work, friendships, romance, family, personal growth, sport and leisure, health, community, and education.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
top three that were best predictors were
Mm-hmm.
job satisfaction was by far
Yeah.
the biggest predictor. Relationship status came in at number 2, and personal growth came in at number 3.
Wow.
Which I thought was interesting.
That
Which
is really
says that at least British men, right, define
yeah.
themselves and
Right.
you know based on their job,
Interesting.
which isn't great, but you know,
But that's it sounds about right.
mm-hmm.
You know, sounds about right.
But when you when you look at the health values, the strongest predictor of mental positivity is health. So when you combine mental health and physical health, health comes out on top as a predictor, which again, it not particularly surprising. And let's see, was there anything else about this one?
The family values thing was interesting. That men who feel that they're not living up to traditional standards for a family man are likely to be at mental health risk. Meaning that like men feel a lot of pressure to live up to the traditional definition of a man providing for his family, which is interesting.
That is interesting, and we'll delve more into that in a second.
We will.
The other thing that was interesting was that mental positivity tended to increase the older you got.
Yeah, sure.
Right, which is counterintuitive, right? I thought,
but no, it's not. I don't think so at all. I totally get where that comes from. Right, is because as you mature and you age, you begin to care less and less what others think of you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you truly start to just say, I get it now. It doesn't matter. I can be me. That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
I'm okay with that.
I
think
found that
it surprised you.
It did.
What did you think it would be?
I figured the younger you were, the more positive you would be, because you've got your whole life ahead of you. You know.
Yeah, but that's hilarious. That's such an old man perspective, right? Youth is wasted on the young, and so like that. It's funny. I mean, pardon me for this, but it is such an old man's perspective on things, because the thing is, as youth, all you care is about like this. It's right in front of you. It's whatever 6 inches from your face is the most important thing, and it is live or die, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, think back to your youth and how obsessed you were with things that now you think, what the hell is wrong? What was wrong with me then?
That's true.
That was so unimportant. And now you really have a much better, one would hope, wise view of what's important, what's not in life. And as you sort of shed that propensity to look 6 inches in front of your face and only the thing, this is so important, this is all that matters. As you shed that, you just go, and you sort of live life, and you become happier and much more centered because you've gotten rid of all that stuff.
Yeah.
That's just so. All right.
I feel it's interesting. So that kind of brings us to this idea of something called the Manbox. And it comes actually from a study called the Manbox, where they looked at, it was conducted by an organization called Promundo, and they looked at men in the U.S., the U.K., and Mexico. And Mexico was, I thought, was a very interesting thing because, you know, I think, you know, Mexico kind of represents a more traditionally macho culture.
Yeah, definitely. Right.
Mucho macho, right? Yeah.
Mucho macho. Yeah.
And guess who funded this one?
Is there a Mexican razor brand?
No.
All right. Is it Axe body spray?
It's Axe body spray. Axe body spray. They were the one who funded it. The study was done in 2017,
By the way,
And
that's not fair. I saw the answers, but
I know. It's okay. It's all right.
just full disclosure.
Yeah, that's all right.
Sorry.
So here's the thing. So the Manbox, basically what they were trying to understand with the study was, what does it mean to be a man in 2017? And the Manbox refers to a set of beliefs and kind of socialized attitudes that are handed down by, our parents, by families, by the media, by our friends, and other members of society. And the Manbox places pressure on men to be a certain way, right? And they tell men to be self-sufficient, to act tough, to be physically attractive, to stick to rigid gender roles, to be heterosexual, and have sexual prowess, right? And then the idea of using aggression to resolve conflicts, right? So that represents, so that we talked about in the Gillette episode, we kind of talked about toxic masculinity. That's kind of the Manbox, right? Is sort of the belief structure that kind of goes around toxic masculinity. And women have their own version of this too, but of late they've been very successful in breaking out of that from an awareness standpoint. So I think there are still certainly some women who are happy in sort of more traditional roles, but most women of our generation, they're in the process of if not liberating themselves from those kinds of stereotypes.
Sure.
It's certainly socially acceptable to sort of break out of those kinds of roles and kind of be who they are. And so I think with men, I think it's we haven't gotten to that point yet, right? There's still a lot of societal expectations on us. And I think what makes it even tougher and more awkward is that at the same time that society has this expectation of us, we're being asked and even demanded that we need to kind of change the way that we operate, right? So as not to, I mean, if you think about, you look at like what's happening in the Me Too movement, right? A lot of the things that drive behaviors like that, where women feel threatened at work, or they feel unsafe, or they feel like they're attacked, or they're objectified, or things like that. Those are a result of behaviors that are socialized by the Manbox, right?
Yeah, totally fair.
And so this study was like super interesting. And what's interesting though is that men who ascribe to this Manbox, men who they call it living in the Manbox, right? So if you're living in the Manbox, well, guess what? You're at a much, much higher risk for mental illness. You're at a much higher risk for suicide. You're much less the risk is pretty substantial.
Right.
Let me see if I can find some data here to kind of. So they looked at younger men for this one. They didn't do the whole spread, right? They were looking at men between 18 and 30. So these are guys in their 20s. Most of them are full-time. They pretty much have a nice spread across ethnicity, although roughly about, I'd say in the United States, about half were white. In the UK, it went up to 81%. It probably is reflective of the general population.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
Let's see. So if you are, let's see, it says here, let's see. So the percentage survey respondents who report that being told that a real man behaves a certain way, right? In the US, it's 72%. So 72% of young men feel that they're supposed to behave in a certain way to be a man. And what's particularly awful about this is that it's, being in the man box is something that you have to continue to do, right? Like manhood is one of those things that it's interesting because in ancient societies, you had a rite of passage, right? And once you went through that rite of passage, you became a man. Right. So for example, in a lot of Arab societies, you reach in African societies, you reach a certain age, you're circumcised, right? That's the ordeal, the
Sure.
ritual ordeal. And then once you're done, you're a man, right? But what the man box theory says is that you have to keep proving your manhood, right? Your manhood is something that can be lost, right? And so there's this anxiety that guys have of, if I don't, of having to live up to, this standard of manhood all the time. So those who let's see, in the UK, that number was 57%. So the survey percentage of guys who feel that a real man behaves in a certain way, and in Mexico it was 68%. Which is interesting because that says that the United States, like we have more hangups about that, than either Mexico or the UK. It says that people who have the young men who've broken outside the man box, let's see, are demonstrate a greater propensity to reject the rigid social ideas about manhood. Right. And so, let's see. Okay. So here are the 7 pillars of what real men are supposed to be.
Okay.
First one, self-sufficiency, right? So the idea of self-sufficiency is that, asking for help is considered weakness, right? You should be tough and self-sufficient. The second one is acting tough, right? And it says that the requirements of this one is twofold. The first is a willingness to defend one's reputation by fighting or using physical force if necessary. And the second one is emotional invulnerability, where men have to, maintain an outward appearance of toughness and strength. So in other words, don't show emotion. The third is physical attractiveness, right? So the thing is you have to dress well and you have to look good, but you can't seem like you're trying too hard.
There you go. Right. I was just going to say.
Right. It's got to look effortless.
Right. Absolutely. And super manly on top of that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly. Rigid masculine gender roles. So real men don't do housework. Right. So there's this, so real men are the breadwinners. Real men make more than their wives. That is, that is a very common aspect of manhood, right? Is that that you're the primary breadwinner. Number 5 is heterosexuality and homophobia. Right. So and then enough said about that. And then number 6 is hypersexuality. So a real man is ready to have sex anytime, anywhere, any place. Right.
Right. Absolutely.
Right. And take that Cialis every day, because you never know when it's going to, when the urge is going to strike and the moment's going to, and you have to take advantage of it. Right. And if you don't, you're not a real man.
That is fantastic.
Isn't it true though?
It really is. It really is.
And then number 7 is aggression and control. Right. So basically that, a real man uses physical violence when necessary to hold control over household decisions, and especially over women, right? Ugh. And so the idea is that, with that, the attitude that a man should always have the final say about decisions in his relationship or marriage, right? And so what do we say? Like we say that like when a man defers to his wife, right? We call him whipped, right?
Mm-hmm.
We use cruder terms than that, but
right,
he's
exactly.
whipped and he's like who wears the pants in the family, dude, right? Like it's that kind of thing,
right? Yeah.
For self-sufficiency, a man who talks a lot about what he's worried about and things like that doesn't really deserve respect. Right. So you can, which is, so it's like
Sure.
if you complain too much, a guy who doesn't fight back when other people push him around is weak. Right. That would be the acting tough thing.
Right.
A guy who spends too much time on how he looks isn't manly, but at the same time,
if he doesn't spend enough time,
right,
not manly.
And then guys sometimes take pride in not knowing how to cook, or when they do, it's like I grill meat, that kind of thing.
Right, exactly.
It's funny, but and the social pressures that they're under, right? A real man should act strong even though he feels nervous or scared. U.S. and Mexico, 59% believe that. UK, 47%.
Wow.
And this one's very interesting. My partner definitely expects me to use violence to defend my reputation if I have to. U.S. 31%, UK 30%, Mexico 19%.
Wow.
Right. Yeah, it's
wow.
it's pretty
So knowing all these things, right?
yeah.
How does Masonry help? Right? Where do we come in to this picture?
That's a good question, and that's why I kind of wanted to bring this into the show is that I feel like Masonry as an institution is basically it's a toolbox that helps us smash the man box. Right?
Yeah, but does it?
It should.
No, I know, but does it? Right?
I don't
because
think
some
does.
of those things, yeah, and some of the things that are identified as the man box, some of the behaviors, they ring too true to me inside of a Masonic lodge, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think at a Masonic lodge, it becomes even more stressful because, especially with the I expect you to defend yourself physically, right? To get in a fight. Yeah. We can't do that. That's a huge no-no in Masonry.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So when you really disagree with someone, it becomes even more like there's even more stress on top of that because society is telling you, punch him in the mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He's done this to you. You need to respond this way. But you can't. And so everybody hates you, including yourself. And so maybe in some ways Masonry perpetuates the box. That hurts, doesn't it? Because I think
about more about that. Tell me more because I'm not sure that that's true.
I think that if we actually listen to what the ritual tells us, if we listen to what we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to behave and act and to investigate ourselves, everything should be fine. But more often than not, we're not listening closely to those instructions. And so I think that Masonry, because it's all men, it tends to reinforce those negative behaviors that result in the man box. And when you couple that reinforcement with the rules inside of Masonry, don't yell at your brother. don't belittle them, don't make a fool of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those kinds of things. What happens is that even though you're with a whole bunch of men, those standards of quote unquote men, the man box, is being reinforced, but at the same time, you're not allowed to act like you're supposed to act.
Mm-hmm.
So that puts double the pressure on a man internally, and creates way more stress and a much better opportunity to have bad mental health, right? So that's kind of how I feel about it. And I think, like, you've got to be careful because, the man box comes from somewhere. And I'm tell you this, 9 times out of 10, it probably doesn't come from women. It's not their expectations that create the man box. It's other men. It's men around us, right? And it's a long piece of culture that's created that. It's a lot of history behind it. So it's very powerful. And so you got to be in the right lodge. You got to be able to, like, have guys that are there to say, like, hey, this is the correct way. If you really listen to this stuff, this is what we're supposed to be doing. To kind of break out of that man box. I think it's very difficult. What's interesting, though, and I think that what your argument is going to be, and I agree with it, is it's all right there. It's all in front of you. Masonry breaks the man box.
Yeah, I think it does. And I think, here's the thing.
If you practice it. If you
practice it.
If you hear it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I a couple things. One is I think if you sort of strip away the imperfect, the fact that, I guess, like, if you started from the idea that, Masonry itself is perfect, right? Like
absolutely.
Right? The ritual, the lessons, the values and stuff. It's, and we regard it as such because we say that, it's immutable, right? Nobody can change, nobody can innovate, nobody can change the aspects of Masonry that are there. If that's the case, then I think when you look at the lectures and you look at how we're taught to resolve conflicts, how we're taught the value and the worth of a man, right?
Yeah, right.
None of it has to do with anything in the man box, right? It
totally breaks out of it.
Right. And then the other thing that I thought was really interesting was that because the man box study was done with young men, right? They all max out at 30, right? Most of the guys that we bring in, I'd say, are probably in their mid to late 20s and 30s, right? Yeah. So they're already starting to get to the edge of that, man. Now, here's the problem. The problem is that if you're socialized in your 20s, right, to live in this man box, you don't stop. You don't hit 30 and go, "Up, I'm done now," right?
Right. Enough with that man box.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't need this box anymore, right? You keep it long into your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, right? And that's where it really starts to become a problem, right?
I agree. I absolutely agree. Stress is cumulative.
Mm-hmm. And not just that, but it starts to take a toll on your long-term relationships and
100%
and stuff like that. And so one of the things that I think is kind of interesting about Freemasonry and what it provides is this sort of intergenerational mix, right? Where you get guys who are just sort of, in the upper age ranges who are happier, who are, more mentally positive, who are like, you know what, I don't care what society thinks of me. I'm going to be who I am. Right. Who have this sort of outlook, who can transmit that wisdom down to these younger guys who are really struggling with having to fit into that box. Right.
Right. 100%.
So,
I'll definitely agree with that. I mean, okay. And just to be fair, my viewpoint on this was relatively bleak, right? because I want to be able to, I want to be able to make sure that everybody out there really sees both sides of this from a Masonic point of view, right? And that in all honesty, I agree with you, but I think that it's really important that we're always looking at ourselves and saying, well, but here's the dark side of that, and it could be bad.
Right.
But you're right; it's all there. It is all there, and it's not hidden. Like they say, like, whoa, wrapped in an allegory. It's all. This ain't symbolism. This is like literally they tell you there's no interpretation necessary. This is the surface.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
First order stuff.
Yeah.
There's no need to break out your Pardis tools. Boom. I've told you. Now go do that.
Yes.
But I love it, and I think I love your idea that a lodge too has more diversity within it, and that diversity is super important to break you out of that man box. That diversity of not just physical diversity, right? Talking about age, race, religion, that stuff, but ideas, diversity of ideas. That's super important. And if you're getting exposed to that and becoming comfortable with being in a place that you're hearing lots of different ideas, not all of which you agree with, it's so good for you mentally. It's so good for you.
Yeah.
It brings about equilibrium, and that's important.
Right. Now here's the problem. And this is like a bit of role reversal here.
There you go. I was just going to say, hey, let's switch this up. Now Eric gets to be the downer.
Yeah. So the problem is that if I'm in a lodge that's full of guys in the box,
sure,
right?
Yeah.
And I'm not doing the work of Masonry, if my Masonic life is simply showing up for dinner, breezing through a business meeting, right, closing, and then going off to the bar for fellowship, right? And I'm not doing, with the occasional, we're going to do a degree where we, we memorize all this stuff and we blech it onto,
Masonry by the motions.
Yeah. A bunch of youngins, right? Then there's no ability, there's no work, there's no process to get guys who might be trapped in this man box out of the man box, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
And so that's, I think that's why, and it's funny too, and we should do a show about this, like, about Masonic education. Like, people talk about Masonic education. Masonic education. I just hear it all the time, and I say to myself, what exactly does that mean? Does that mean just like I'm going to delve into the esoteric functions of the? I think what's more valuable is looking at the lessons. Just take the second degree, for example, like just the lessons in the middle chamber lecture, right? The things that are talked about there, right? If you actually start to practice those and to say, all right, we're going to practice the elements that are sort of in the second degree as part of what we do in lodge, right?
It's huge.
That to me is way more important, right? Than simply, talking about, what does Mackey say about blah, blah, blah?
Right,
or what does Wilmhurst say about,
Oh, you don't know who Trismegistus is? Well, fine. Whatever.
Right. So I think that
alchemist are you.
Exactly. Right. So I think that's, I agree. Right. So I think that
100%.
that Masonry has the potential, And let's be clear. Like what's the reward? Well, the reward is being happy. The reward,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Is
Right.
a positive mental attitude. The reward is less stress in your life. The reward is a better support network. The
Right.
reward is brotherly love, right?
It's really funny. Okay, so and I want to go back to something that you just said there, that the reward is being happy. I want to talk about this for just a quick second because this is a peccadillo of mine. What does happy mean, right? What does that mean? Does it mean that you're walking around with a smile on your face all day? That's not what happy actually means. So growing up, my dad is a psychotherapist. He's a clinical social worker by trade.
And how do you feel about that, Jason?
That's exactly right. And so like my dad hated that the whole, because what's really funny is that people think that that's the goal. That's not, because that's not healthy, being happy all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Neither is being sad all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And typically what'll happen is that when you're out of balance, you get into a spot that's unhealthy, that's bipolarism, right? I'm really happy, I'm really sad.
Mm-hmm.
Neither of those things are good for you at all. And in fact, are much more destructive for you than just being all sad all the time. It turns out bipolarism is a debilitating, terrible, terrible mental disease akin to schizophrenia. Like it's that devastating.
Yeah.
And so my dad used to have bipolar patients tell him, like, I just stopped taking the meds. And why? I don't feel anything. I'm always this. And he went, yeah, that's the point. That's how normal people should be. You're not too sad. You're not too happy. You're, all right. He said, that's the point. When you're out of balance and you feel all of your emotions like that, that's not necessarily the healthiest thing. And his point to them was, examine what happy means, because happy isn't the definition you think it is. And happiness is a balance. It is a stasis. It's a good middle ground, right?
Mm-hmm.
I almost said happy, using happy to define happy, but that's it. And I've always thought that way, that true happiness is sort of a middle ground to all of that stuff. It's not walking around smiling and, jazzing all day. That's not what that is. It's being good, content, comfortable. Those are happy adjectives.
There's something that I wanted to take a look at.
Okay.
And that was the, so it's interesting. Like, so they looked at these behaviors, of guys, like the range of guys who are stuck in the man box versus free of the man box.
All right.
And they use sort of a 5-point scale. And by the way, we'll post, all the studies
Sure.
in the show notes so that you can check them out yourself. Let's see. Just give me a second here to. Yeah, so the United States. So guys who are most stuck in the man box, right? So it let's see. Let me see if there's a rating here. Yeah, so it's a 1 is stuck in the man box, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 is free of the man box. Depressive symptoms, 51%. So 51% of guys.
Yeah, there you go.
Were showed evidence of depressive symptoms. 56% had suicidal thoughts.
Wow.
Right? Versus 19% of people who are free of the man box. Perpetration of bullying, 81%. Right?
Wow.
So if you're believing that, right?
Right.
Experiences of bullying, 87%.
Yeah. That follows.
Right?
Yeah.
Sexual
Yeah.
harassment, 71%.
Mm-hmm.
Binge drinking, 27% versus
Not as high as I would
18%.
have thought. Not as high as I would have thought, actually.
Really?
Yeah, I would have thought it was higher.
And then they had an
He says as he finishes his beer.
individuality rating of 21% versus 13% for people who are free of the man box.
Yeah.
That's the United States. In the UK, it's even worse in some cases. Suicidal thought, 69%. Actually, that wasn't as bad. Suicidal thought. Yeah, no, it is bad. It is worse.
Yes, that's super
70%. 70% of
Yeah.
guys in the man box in the UK thought about killing themselves. Perpetration of bullying, 81%. It's roughly the same, but experiences of bullying goes up to 90%. Sexual harassment, 75%. Binge drinking, 27%.
Right on,
Same as the
right on
US.
par. Right on par. I really would have thought it was higher, but that's okay.
Yeah. Mexico, slight uptick in the binge drinking.
Mm-hmm.
But the other ones were not as prominent. So only 36% suicidal thoughts, only 73% and 79% bullying. So that's kind of interesting, but it really does, the thing about the man box is that it's worse for the guy in the man box than it is for the people around him.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Although for the people around him, he can be kind of insufferable as well, right? If he's out there bullying
Sure.
other people and
Right.
sexually
It's not the best.
harassing, and
not the best for them either.
Right.
Yeah. But it is marginally worse for him.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. So here's my question to kind of wrap this up a bit is, what if we're in a lodge, like are there concrete steps that we can take or that we should take to, I don't know, be aware of this? I mean, it almost seems like I feel like, maybe like if we were to start thinking about like what charities we're supporting, maybe men's health charities, you know what I mean? Like that might be a pretty good fit for,
right. That might be a good idea in some way.
In some way.
Totally.
But do you think that there's anything else that as individual Masons or as a lodge that we could do to kind of help this? Because here's what bothers. Look, it's pretty easy for us to say something like, you know what, don't be a jerk, right? So don't bully people, right. Don't harass people, right? Don't act all puffed up and with your chest out, like don't act like a gorilla.
Sure.
Right? We're more evolved, which is fine, and we can sort of as a society, we can sort of, we can sort of create those standards of behavior. I mean, that's sort of the whole idea of the gentleman, right? Is that we tamp down those urges and create kind of a veneer, a facade of sort of being gentle, being in control, being,
sure.
Right. But if you're living in the man box, you're having to behave another way, that creates a lot of conflict within yourself. Right. And then I think that's why we are, more suicidal. That's why we're more depressed. That's why we feel more isolated. Right. It's like, we feel like, well, we can't reach out and ask help from our brothers because we're too proud and we're too too ruggedly individual. It's an admission of weakness, right?
Sure.
So is there anything that we can do to
like systematically?
I don't know.
I don't know if there is, so in DC, I think we're starting an initiative where we're going to try and address this a little bit with our charities, actually, with our the Masonic Foundation of DC. at the last Masonic Foundation board meeting and general meeting a couple months ago, or about a month ago, one of the board members stood up and talked exactly about this, especially men's mental health, you know, and saying, listen, we don't do enough. Like we do plenty if one of our members needs a kidney. If one of our members goes to the hospital, all that stuff, that physical stuff, we do tons for. But what do we do for the member who has mental health issues? What do we do to help a member understand that they have mental health issues that need to be addressed? You know, and that's really important, is identifying the problem first and then getting help for it. And so he had talked about how the jobs that he had an employee assistance program where you could call somebody, you know, and that person would give a quick evaluation and say, hey, yeah, it's worth you reaching out and seeing somebody. Here's somebody for you to call, right? And so they're trying to figure out how to structure that. And what we can and can't, like what we can do to help guys, you know, maybe get some local healthcare professionals into lodges and talk to guys and say, hey, here are things that, you know, are not normal. You know, here's a stress level. This is what stress really does to you. This is what stress is. Here's what's not good. Do you have these behaviors? Think about it yourself. If you do, we need to address your stress levels and how you're dealing with that stress, you know, that kind of stuff. And that's huge. You know, if you can do that, you know, it doesn't probably even cost that much money to just at least ask a health professional to come in and talk about stress and stress reduction. Not hard.
So that's good. But
I mean, it's a drop in the bucket.
It's a drop in the bucket. But if you're trapped in the man box, what's the likelihood that you're going to call that, you know, that, what do they call it? An EAP?
Yeah.
You know, what's the, I think that
depends on how bad things are.
Well, so here's what I think. I think that Masons need training in how to intervene on behalf of a brother who's trapped. Right. And I think I'm thinking about two friends who both of them have severe alcoholism. And, you know, both of them were very productive members of the fraternity. And both have drifted away because of their alcoholism. And I felt at the time, I mean, one of them I didn't feel like I knew well enough to be able to intervene. The other, I just didn't know what to do. And I just felt like we missed an opportunity. Like we should have been, in a way, we should have been there for them. Now, some people might say, well, it's their responsibility. And yes, it is. But if they're not able to, right, what then becomes our responsibility in trying to get them help?
Right.
And that's a really hard, difficult, thorny question.
Yeah, it is. It really, really is.
Right.
It's tough. Yeah. I don't know. Well, that's really tough.
Yeah. So anyway, look, I think it's okay to end it there because, you know, at least we're scratching the surface and we're starting the conversation.
Yeah, I agree.
If you're listening to this, we would love to know what you think. Drop us a line.
I would love to hear if you have ideas. You know,
X-Oriente.com. Leave a comment on the YouTube channel or on Facebook, and let us know. We purposely didn't promote the show this week because we didn't know if there was going to be one, but we've broken the curse.
Right. Absolutely. We broke out of our own man box.
We broke out of our own self-imposed technological man box.
That's right.
And
we broke out of the tech box.
The tech box. And so now that we're back on track, we'll be doing some more stuff. A couple things. First, this is the part of the show where we thank our executive producers. Without their generous and continued support, none of this stuff happens. And we've recently made some more improvements. And now that Jason, now that you're taking over the Ex Libris releases, we can actually we can actually say this is a. Let me show you this week's releases. So, Jason, what's on the menu this week?
The menu this week is Madame Blavatsky, Isis Unveiled, Volume 1 and 2, and her Theosophical Glossary, which are foundational level books. Aleister Crowley's The Equinox, Volume 3, The Blue Equinox. Again, also foundational stuff. John Dee, Rosicrucian Secrets. That one's a little bit more advanced, I would say, than the other ones. And it's not Dee's most interesting thing, but it's still cool and worth the read. What Eric and I were talking about as we put together the selections for the Ex Libris this week, I thought this is a lot like wine pairing, right?
Yeah.
And then I started with, wow, we should really put out the Blavatsky because that's, she's super. That collection is very foundational. It's just kind of a first brush with esoteric studies, and you said, oh, that's good, yeah, but we should do the Crowley thing, and that goes well, that pairs well, and then you really start to think about these things and how they sort of weave together a little bit, and that's kind of fun. So there you go. That is the Ex Libris for this week.
And so what alcoholic beverage would we pair with these particular books?
God, that's a great question.
A fine cognac?
No.
Slivovitz?
No.
Malort?
Right, Malort. That's great. For all you non-Chicago people out there, I feel bad for you.
Drinking, just for people who don't know, drinking Malort is like imbibing a tire fire in your mouth.
It is. That's true. Yeah. Anytime anyone says to you,
it's the worst liqueur ever made.
When anyone says to you, if you say, "Oh, sure, I'd love to have whatever that is," and they say, "Oh, do you like some Malort?" Sure. What is that? And if anybody ever answers the question, "What is that?" with, "Oh, it's an herbal liqueur," run away.
Yeah.
That is never okay. Herbal liqueur, those two words, danger. Because it's always going to taste terrible, just awful. Scullion Green, same thing. It tastes like lawnmower gasoline. I think for these, I would go with a cheap wine.
A cheap wine, okay.
Yeah, cheap wine. A base level cheap wine, like a turning leaf. Something that well, it was $12.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not talking bum wine. Don't go out and get yourself some Mogan David for these, but like a Kendall Jackson,
Okay.
a Kendall Jackson Syrah.
Okay.
Be a basic bitch while you're reading these, because that's what you're reading is basic stuff. So drink a basic wine.
Cool. All right, so there you have it. A Kendall Jackson Syrah with the Theosophical.
The hell out of that. Yeah.
So listen, if you'd like access to Ex Libris, the way to do that is to become an executive producer. You can do that by going to our Patreon page at patreon.com/X-Oriente and making a pledge. And we're kind of in the midst of revamping the whole executive producer program. So that's more to come on that. But in the meantime, thank you. Jason, I think, was the only one who showed up in the chat room. And so we thank him for coming.
Thanks, Jay.
And we will be, we'll be promoting and cross-promoting and everything like that now that we've got our technical issues under control. And now that we've got this episode behind us, the world is our clam.
Woohoo! The world is our clam. That's great. The world is our, I don't know, pick your dirty bottom feeding mollusk.
That's right.
Yeah.
Pick your mollusk.
Yeah. Right then.
So anyway, take care. We'll see you next time. Fiat Vox, everybody.
Fiat Vox, everyone.